Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Frugal Noodle, the podcast dedicated to helping you understand money, finance, investing, retirement, early or otherwise, simple living, and on today's episode, setting goals for 2022. Before we get into today's episode, I'm going to drop a line for the Frugal Noodle Etsy shop. I'm packing it up slowly with more and more tools and whatnot to help you with budgeting, productivity, and the like, along with some silly stuff as it comes to me. Like the Valentine's cards I made with my wife. It's a neat digital download that you can print as many times as you like and give out to friends and loved ones, or strangers that you want to immediately put off. There's also the monthly and annual budgeting sheet that I'm putting on sale for this week. 50% off. You'll be able to drop in your most basic of info, like salary or hourly rate, your investment goals, monthly budget, and then you just log transactions as they occur or at the end of the week or month. And the sheet is chock full of formulas and visuals to help you understand where you're spending the most and how you can curtail some of those habits you don't recognize. But that's enough Etsy shop talk. Let's get into the show. It's been the joke of the last 2 years now, how each year seems to outdo the last in terms of how much of a bummer it ends up being. But that's based on a media depiction of the world as a whole, which, don't get me wrong, does look harrowing at times. But the media banks on viewers tuning in for updates, and gone are the days of the news sharing latest on what's going on at the zoo in the birth of a panda bear. Why? Because no one feels the urgency to tune in to happy, feel-good, go-lucky news because it's not a threat to them. This is a topic in and of itself that could take hours on another podcast, but my point is that the year is what you make of it within your community and your bubble. There's a different lens to look through than the blue glasses that the media puts on things. So, how negative the last couple years have been on a global scale, or how bad this year could be for the world as a whole, let's set that aside and talk about your year. What are you going to get out of this year? What can you get out of this year? What goals will you set and how will you check them off? How will you work toward that dream you've always had? These are the questions I will talk about this episode and share some examples of what my family did with 2021 and plans to do with 2022, just for some perspective. From where I stand and what I observe, it feels like the number of people that are broadcasting hopelessness about getting ahead in life is climbing by the day. There are many reasons this can be true for some, but I think we're getting caught up in the muck of each other's negativity and it's dragging us down. And look, I know everyone's situation is different and it's not fair to assume, but I'm not convinced that there's no hope for as many people as I hear it from. Now, from the outside looking in, people will probably look at my family and say, they're so lucky, they're so fortunate. And while I do agree with the person that says that, we are lucky and we are fortunate. I'd also say that it's not very fair to look at a snapshot of someone's life through the lens of social media or a fleeting glance and draw any conclusions. I'm going to preface all of these personal examples within this episode by saying that my wife and I work very hard and give up a lot to achieve our goals. And it's not about working overtime for someone else's business or about avoiding the pleasures in life. More than anything, it's about recognizing the value of time and not giving it away with reckless abandon as so many people do nowadays. It's also about just doing the thing, whatever it is. If you want to be an artist, but maybe you don't think you're good enough yet, then pick up the brush. If you want to be a day trader but don't understand the market, then try a simulator online that tracks the actual market and learn it. Do you want to write a novel? Start writing something. Want to learn to cook? Burn some stuff in the kitchen for a few weeks. My point? You got to learn through practice and don't get discouraged from the first few days, weeks, months, or even years. If you look at my wife and I, you may see two millennials that aren't kicking rocks over the shape of things, which is abnormal to most. Don't get me wrong, millennials, Gen Z, and so on do not have an easy road ahead of us. But you can't let that discourage you from trying to get ahead. And that's where we learn that while there are some people that were given a true head start, a lot of us appear ahead because of the dedication to get there. And to the point of this podcast, it's not just hard work, it's discipline. If you're looking to start investing but find that you don't have the extra money to play with, then it might be necessary to reflect on your spending habits. A lot of people talk about how they're at the financial limit, despite living with what they believe to be within or well below their means. But as I talked about plenty in season 1 of the show, The mainstream image of living within our means is quite extravagant, thanks to credit cards, loans, and the social expectation of presenting status, regardless of whether or not you fit that income tax bracket. Maybe you took on more than you should have with the auto loan that you're under now because the car was nicer than the other options, or the apartment you could have saved with just because it wasn't a favorite part of your town, or you just can't kick that daily cafe-made beverage. If you recall the math of what this all costs you in a year, it ain't worth it. If you can't recall, then check out my earlier episodes for that math. So to conclude that somebody got somewhere due to luck and fortune, consider that they may be a little less caffeinated than you, or drive their cars to the ground, or live in the lesser desired part of town. And of course, there are people who do not live frugally and are braggadocious about their status, and they were handed everything on a silver platter. But even getting caught up in how easy it is for them and that you shouldn't even try is not the mindset for getting ahead yourself. My wife and I still share one car. It's from before 2010. It's a Japan-made econo car that does not have any bells nor whistles. It does have an aux port, but its speakers sound like tin cans. We live in a rural Michigan setting where you can expect to save on mortgage, rent, and taxes because there's minimal infrastructure here. And we brew our own coffee and tea, so we don't have a cafe bill. All these points aside, what will you do with 2022? Or what will 2022 do for you? You could go into the year with an investment goal in mind. What do you want to hit in your 401k? 10, 20, 30% of your income? More? Do you want to max it out for the year? We did that in 2021 and plan to do so in 2022 by continuing to keep our budget in check. Maybe you want to explore individual stocks or crypto. Take your time to learn those markets before you do so, but you could hit your 401k goal and move into other investments like we do. And as I've mentioned in previous episodes, you don't have to hit your 401k max for the year before you make other investments. You can set it up in the beginning of the year so that on the last pay period of the year, you'll hit your max in your 401k, and then you go through the year making your other investment moves. Maybe you want to work on making budgeting a habit so you can cut down on poor spending trends that you think you might have. Well, there are plenty of resources out there to get you into budgeting. And like I said at the beginning of the episode, my budget sheet is on sale this week. We are aware of incoming and outgoing money in our home because it's the only way you can accurately track and plan around financial goals. Do you want to get out of a living situation based on rent and get into your own house? This is totally doable if you pair up with budgeting and work towards a savings goal for a down payment. And like I mentioned, pick a less desirable area or rural area like we did, and you'll be floored by how much you can save with a little house hacking. Of course, you'll consider neighborhood safety and commute time if that is a factor for you. These are big goals for someone just getting interested in investing and budgeting. You can also start small. Maybe you want to get away from your current car with a loan that just won't go away and into a car that you can own outright. It sounds hard to make happen, but if you can accept a less desirable car than what you have, you can trade out or sell your current car, roll the rest of your loan into the new car or into a personal loan, and throw money at it hard until you pay it off. We're two people who each had a car, so our situation was easier as a partnership. We just coordinated our transportation needs between the two of us and were able to make it work. So we only had to sell one car and then pay off the other. But we were living with two loans that didn't seem to go anywhere for years. And those were only being bolstered by our credit cards and other loans. Take the time to understand how loans and credit works, and you'll do your damnedest to not get into it ever again for the rest of your life. The same goal can be set for credit cards, but they can be harder than auto loans, only because with an auto loan, you have the asset in front of you and know exactly what your money is going toward. With a credit card, you often can't remember which purchases got you in the position you're in. Again, credit is a beast in and of itself. And if you don't throw money at the principal on your loan, it will not only haunt you for years, but it will blow the original purchase price way out of proportion. We have 3 credit cards between us. We use one occasionally to take advantage of the points, which means we make purchases like groceries or gas and pay it off immediately. The other credit cards are purely for the sake of emergencies or buffers if we need to pull from any hard-to-withdraw savings. But why not try some smaller goals on for size? Like just kicking some poor spending habits that have been normalized. You could manage your subscriptions like we do, where we only have one streaming service at a time and rotate a new one in and the old one out every few months. Or cut out cafe-made coffee, drinks at the bar, or dining out. We haven't taken part in more than 2 or 3 restaurants or cafes or bars in over a year now. We brew our own coffee, as I mentioned. We make all 3 meals a day, every single day. And if we have a drink, it's at home. Cutting back on snacks is a great habit to work on as well. Obviously, snacking is not really good for your health in general, but the extra money we spent on snacks before we really started looking at our habits was certainly not negligible. We went from 2 snack drawer fulls of different boxes and bags of snacks to a drawer dedicated to our canning jars and a drawer dedicated to our winter squash. Yes, you heard that right, winter squash, which we grew from our own garden. But if you give a snack-free lifestyle a chance or just replace those pre-made stacks with fruit, you'll find that not only does your wallet feel heavier, but your body will feel better. And bonus points if you can integrate a fasting regimen. You want to know the wildest area that we're saving on? Toilet paper. Yep, you also heard that right. We're not completely toilet paper free, but ever since adding a bidet and family cloths to our lives, we're probably about 95% toilet paper free. And I can hear you scoffing at the notion, but it's actually very hygienic. The bidet is basically like taking a shower, and the cloths are basically like using a towel after that shower. It's not that scary, I promise. And 1 week goes by and you're already adjusted to that new norm, and you'll miss your bidet and family cloths whenever you're away from home. These goals aside, simple, difficult, practical, or toilet paper free, you can do something this year, even if it's just saving $150, $10 a paycheck. It's the effort you're willing to put in and the willpower you have to maintain it and keep it going. Start with a small adjustment, and hopefully it leads into a snowball effect into more positive adjustments. Do you want to start a garden someday? You could buy a Home Depot bucket tomorrow and grow some potatoes this summer just to prove to yourself that it can be done. But give yourself that motivation sooner rather than later, because the later you start at these habits, the harder it is to build up into their full potential. So ask the question, 2020, what can I do for you? Or what can you do for me? However you want to word it. Make some commitments to yourself and keep yourself honest. Don't overdo it and don't lose momentum. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Frugal Noodle. Be sure to follow the show wherever you get podcasts, subscribe, and follow on social media. There are links in the bio below. Also check out the Etsy shop, as I mentioned. The music for this episode was produced by CARBS. This has been Frugal Noodle. Thank you for listening.